Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. We're going to get rolling in just another minute or two, give everyone a chance to log in, and then we'll get going. Thank you.
We play hold music now.
I left my guitar at home. We are 231. Give it one more minute.
The verdict that it was like an interesting background or a boring background. I think the more interest takes away from obviously having to look at me, which is a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I got stuck with the boring one.
Well, that's what it says about you. People want to look at you rather than the background, which is it's a compliment.
Benefit of being at the office, so I don't have to worry about my cat attacking me from behind. So we're recording. Screen. Alrighty, so let's get going. So everybody, thank you very much for joining us today. We're going to be going over a few things that hopefully will happen once the PowerPoint decides to behave. Okay. Okay. Oh.
Is it just frozen? What's the?
No, just had a slight problem with some of the text there. Something changed at some point, and no worries. Cool. So today we're going to be going over simple tips for better BIM management. We're going to be focusing on the use of the tool Plannerly, which is new for Microdesk as a partnership. So presenting it's going to be myself and Clive, and we're going to get going over a little bit of the basics first. Just to let everybody know, you're going to be muted for the duration of the presentation. If anybody does have any questions, anything that they want to say, please pop it into the chat or into the questions as part of the GoToWebinar, and I'll be keeping an eye on that and try to answer things either in the process as we go through things, or at the very end if it doesn't slot into what we're going over. Okay. And make sure everything is catching up. There we go. Good. So to introduce Plannerly, I'd like to have Clive start this part off.
Absolutely. So welcome if you haven't heard of us. We're the BIM management platform, and we're super excited to have this partnership now with Microdesk because it means that a lot more people in North America and expanding can enjoy. Actually, we need to update these slides even. So 12,000 users, we're now at 15,000 users, and that is in over 100 different countries in, I think, 20 odd different languages. So it's an exciting time. If you want to find out more, then jump on that link and check it out. Obviously, after the webinar, find out more about the team and how we're growing and how we can support you in BIM management. And we're excited to share tips today. So it will be 5 key tips about how to improve the BIM management workflow. And I think especially excited today because it's supported by Microdesk and their extensive set of professionals. I think that Peter is going to share more about.
Definitely. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Microdesk, we are a AECO consulting technology firm. We've been around since '94. We've got 13 locations in the US as well as the one in the UK. We work on projects across the country and across the world. And we have over 230 technical staff. And in that staff, everybody who comes typically from the industry, they have a background, whether it's working as structural engineer, mechanical, infrastructure, architectural, construction. No, we all come from actually doing the work as opposed to just knowing how it's supposed to work. As far as that, a lot of our focus these days is on the ever-growing globalization and urbanization. We have a lot of our projects with our clients are focusing on sustainability and trying to make sure that the technology that is available is used as efficient as possible to make the best of what resources are around. And in helping us do this, we have a bunch of industry-leading partners. One of the most recent ones is actually Plannerly, which is part of what this presentation is about, to announce that and to make sure everybody's aware of what the tool is and how it can actually benefit projects. Some of the things that we do to take advantage of our partners and the tools and the feature sets is we work on projects with our clients. We do visualization services that can include rendering or taking advantage of different technologies like virtual reality or AR. Asset management, we have a whole team on that, as well as we also have a development team. So if we have to create code or customization to tie different software together or to create integrations, we can actually do that. So today's presentation is going to be a joint presentation by Plannerly and Microdesk. The presenters are going to be myself, Peter Marchese, pardon the cheesy photo. My background is actually as an architect. I did that for about 10 years before moving on to the consulting side. So my focus here is on BIM and emerging technologies. So I work with all of our cloud technologies. I manage a lot of them. I also work on VR, AR, play around with the UAVs a little bit of everything. I make sure that the new tech is actually useful as opposed to just shiny. Clive?
And my background is engineering. I'm an engineer and nerd at heart, and it has shown through as an intern, as an architect, when we were actually using pen and paper. I love the fact that people, obviously you guys online are responding with, you don't look old enough to be to be sharing that. And then I was a contractor for 6 years, and then implemented BIM through the first 4D and 5D software commercially available, the Vico side of things. So if you're familiar with Vico software, I was one of the founding team there. And then implementing BIM across a huge supply chain for a developer, a very large developer. Every single one of those through AECO has been for BIM and BIM related. And now super excited to be helping the team here and helping our industry beat evil BIM. So the focus and the tagline there, evil BIM, fighting evil BIM, is all about reducing the waste and really getting the value that we want to from implementing BIM across our project. And I don't know whether I forward the slide or not.
No worries. So for today's agenda, we're going to be doing an introduction as to what Plannerly is for everybody who's not familiar with it. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we saw in the industry that helped us find Plannerly and what it's actually been working with. Clive is definitely going to go over how we can solve a lot of those issues and the problems that people run into with the different feature sets of Plannerly. I'll talk about one of the actual use cases that we've run into with one of our clients, and then we'll have Q&A for anything that we didn't get a chance to touch on during the duration of the presentation. But before we get into that, I just want to ask the audience just a couple of basic questions. So launch that first one. So first one, just basically, what is your role? Are you in the design engineering side of things? Are you more on the project manager? Other could be something like an owner or construction, anything that's not in the other three. Okay. Alrighty. Thank you very much, everybody, for participating in that. Next one is, are you currently working on BIM execution plans or working with LOD or level of design or detail requirements on your projects? And don't worry, I only have one more after this.
We're asking questions, and it's just to share as well that, as Peter said, if you have questions, throw them in the questions panel, and we will get to them as well. Love to hear and understand what is important for you when it comes to these topics.
Okay. And then the last one, are you currently working with cloud or mobile technology on your projects? That's the skew I was looking for. A lot of people in yes or plan too soon. Perfect. Thank you very much for your participation, everybody. Definitely appreciate that. So, on with the show.
Yeah.
So what we're starting off is sort of what we believe in, and that is a couple of graphics seem to have not been happy right now, but basically working with the right BIM, looking at the right. So the graphic here was supposed to say the smart BIM. So what that actually means is the right BIM at the right time by the right people for the right reasons. So making sure that when you're working with things, you're not just making it in 3D. You're not just making it look nice. You're not just putting in information in there because somebody told you to. You're actually thinking through the process and making sure that you're putting it in there when it's needed, so you're not wasting too much time up front, and that you're making sure it's actually useful and that the right people with the right knowledge are taking care of it.
You have to have a customer for the end result that you're putting out there. Otherwise, something happened to these slides. Do you want to switch to the?
Yep.
Do I have them up on here and they look fine on the?
Yep. So give me 1 second. Yep.
We were attempting to use a Microsoft syncing like Google Slides, and I will reserve my comments for another time.
There we go. With the amount of stuff I have running on my computer, I take full blame. There we go.
So yeah, the Smart Lean BIM is a trademark that is about doing the right BIM at the right time by the right people for the right reasons, and specifically for the right reasons is important to make sure that there's a customer for every piece of the workflow, because otherwise, if there's not a customer that's going to use the model or the element, the output, the data, the information, whatever it is, the drawing at the end of the day, then you'll have produced a wasteful end product and no value for the customer, but it has taken time and money to do that. So this is the commitment, is how do we get to a leaner approach and a more valuable approach for implementing BIM so that everyone wins. And this is kind of like a duo at the moment. These are so many of the uses that you would have for the model. And because there's so many uses, you can end up with lots of different requirements. The model that you create for marketing is going to be completely different to the model that you need for analysis on the frame or people movement. And then the model that you take quantities from is going to be completely different from the model that you use in facilities potentially. It depends on what you're using the model for as to how and what you put in, when it goes in, how accurate is required, etc. So there's this complex set of use cases for BIM, and being able to identify what those are before you go and create a model that's not going to be useful for one of those is really, really important. Yeah.
Now, some of the challenges that we typically run into on any project is going to be related to communication. So one person is thinking of one thing, they're explaining it to another, and maybe they have an idea of what they're talking about, but their idea doesn't quite jive up, or they understand it, but they go in a different direction, or two people know about it, but the third doesn't quite get it. So one of the biggest challenges with anything, regardless of the kind of work or the kind of project, is the communication aspect of it. Thankfully, a lot of our work, it tends to be visual, but that doesn't always mean the same thing. Three people can look at the same drawing or even the same 3D model, and they might interpret it slightly different. They might think that it's being built at a slightly different thing or pace. Or they might expect, well, I didn't need to give this to you until next month. Why are you asking for it now?
Yeah. Have you had
there's a lot of...
Sorry. Have you had owners where they have expected a really, really detailed model, but obviously the miss has been that the engineering team or the architect has expected to produce something maybe of less developed and less detailed, less advanced as maybe in the owner's mind, this magical BIM but they've been sold. Has that come up at all on projects that you've worked on?
In the last week.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's such a common problem, but this is maybe some of the challenge. Yeah.
And there are a lot of tools out there that are aiming to help this. So most likely everybody here has heard of LOD and understand what that means. The GSA has documentation on this that helps explain what the numbers mean or how to break up a project. AIA has documentation on that. And the nice thing is BIM Forum has a whole set of information on that, a whole book, and also an Excel spreadsheet that you can download. The problem with all of that, though, is that it's still not the most efficient medium to explain what your ideas are, or what your thoughts are, or when the deliverables are. Even if you're using the Excel spreadsheet online, so multiple people can access it whenever they need to, or to edit that, you're still looking at data in a field. You're still kind of hoping that my understanding of what 100 means is what your understanding of what 100 means. You're still having to search through it, maybe filter, or try to wrangle the spreadsheet to really make sense of who's delivering what and what responsibilities there are, or try to connect it to different services. So that way you can start putting in things like the specs or the model. So the Excel spreadsheet's a great starting point, but at some point you might get to a larger project where it's just cumbersome. It's not really efficient anymore. That's where Plannerly comes in.
Yeah, I think that on the last slide, there's another dimension to that as well, that there's a cell with a number on an Excel spreadsheet, but there's the, how accurate. Sure, there's another cell that says who the responsible party is, but then what data is important, so what information parameters, and trying to build that with a set of even more tabs in a spreadsheet has become a challenge because there's so much to manage. That's really what we see in the industry. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And that's essentially where Plannerly comes in. You're taking all of the features and workflows that people might expect from something like writing up the document in Word, putting in all of the organization like we saw in the last slide from the Excel, creating PDFs so that way the information can be somewhat locked down or marked up on. So it's taking all of those different pieces in, working with different authoring tools like, say, Revit, SketchUp, Tekla, and working with all the other tools to really try to organize and streamline the workflow. And I'll pass this off to Clive now.
And so overall in the industry, we suffer from a lot of challenges, and some of them are on here. So we have a BIM execution planning workflow that's to support our projects, but unfortunately they take a long time to create. Nobody ends up reading it. It gets sent on an email. We end up with trying to put together all of these different standards, and very difficult to convey those when we're putting them in spreadsheets, who's responsible, and have buy-in on that. And then when we're managing the workflow, having disparate schedules that a lot of people are working on in different systems, and then all people starting when they think they should start rather than knowing based on having the ceilings in before I put something that's going to be dependent on that, and a workflow that maybe creates too many clashes. And that all bottles in a lot of waste and ends up in people creating maybe duplicate scope, which is again a lot of waste. So there's so many different challenges that we see in the BIM management workflow, and it's really tough. It's really, really difficult to manage all of these aspects. And if we, can I advance the slides, Peter, or is that not?
Yep, here, you can set this up.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we're on a version, I don't know whether this version of the slides has been updated. Let me see. I'm trying to advance the slide now. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep, a little bit of lag.
Okay, a little bit of lag. So the principle is that we work with lots of different tools to try to do our best in managing the BIM workflow. And what we've done at Plannerly is combine all of those different aspects into one online platform that helps teams to communicate and make sure that everyone is agreeing before you go and waste time creating something in maybe a BIM use that is not going to be delivered to a customer that's going to see value in that. So what we have as a platform are 5 modules that take you from your templates in BIM execution planning right the way through to BIM compliance. And what we want to share with you is just a couple of kind of thoughts on how that workflow can advance your standards and tips to combat some of these challenges. So, Peter.
Clive, I'm not sure if you're still talking. I can't hear you right now. It looks like it cut off for a second. Okay. Well, while I wait for Clive to reconnect, so essentially what we're looking at are some of the different challenges that we have. Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'm back. I'm not sure, did you get, so my question there to you was the BIM execution workflow that is a challenge for teams today when they're creating them or using them or communicating with them. What do you see and what do your customers see in the BIM execution planning workflow?
A lot of them are just trying to figure out what's the best way to track down and create the execution plan. And then the fun part's trying to follow that up and ensure that, okay, well, we created it, we put it out there, we know everyone has seen it, but are they actually following through and are they delivering on what we've asked for or what the proposal and the paperwork is expecting?
Right. So one of the things that and I think maybe I've lost my power to advance slides again based on being disconnected. Aha, perfect. So one of the things that we love to see is the ability to create simple documents, not 100-page documents that obviously get attached to an email and never get read because it's a very challenging thing. Everyone's got a lot of things on their plate, but we're trying to simplify that workflow and enable it to be quicker. So enabling you to access all of your templates in a piecemeal fashion and drag and drop those to create the initial starting point has been very powerful. And being able to create that in one environment that you can have a commenting and a review process and keep the in-progress content outside of the view of people that maybe don't need access to it while you're working on it, have a commenting process and an approval process so that you can publish content as you are creating it and keep it all online. And that's really where Plannerly really helps to, one, standardize your templates so that you've got a starting point to rapidly create future projects and contracts. And then 2, helping teams to collaborate and in bite-sized pieces get approval on the workflows that you are proposing across the team. So that's really the plan module, and we can dig in more, but and if there are questions specifically, but the plan module helps you to standardize BIM execution planning workflows that are very critical to get right early on in your projects. And then maybe my clicks aren't working.
Oh, give it 1 second, it should show up for you.
Ah, and then we talked there, so Peter introduced that there are many standards and some great templates that can get you started when you're planning the scope, and trying to assign responsibilities is a big deal and making sure that people know what they're responsible for. But what happens is that can be confusing and complex and can be many different spreadsheets. So the scoping side is to advance that by making it very visual. It looks like we have.
Yep, 1 second.
So making it very visual and making it so that not everyone needs a degree in LOD or a degree in BIM even to understand what it is that's going to be created at what point in time and who is responsible for it. So being able to control what the requirements are for the geometry, the documentation, and the information, and being able to tie it into a visual grid is really, really powerful. And suddenly you get buy-in from even executive level that has been very anti-BIM up until they start to understand really what is going to happen, who's responsible, what the handoffs are, for example. So here we can see 3 milestones that have been detailed to define. In the first milestone, we are creating content for a structural estimate, and we are merely creating 2D content because that's what we are ready and that's what the estimator needs. And then at a milestone for the MEP coordination, we're then going into 3D for some of this content, and we're adding more elements, and we're assigning it to potentially a different responsible party. So you can see that it was responsibility of the architect. Now, at a different stage, it becomes the responsibility of the structural team. So this workflow, and then also being able to identify, you can see information requirements and checklists and things like that that are very key in that workflow. So helping teams to understand responsibility and helping teams understand why they're creating the model in the first place are really, really key in that workflow. And I think I clicked, so it should advance.
Mm-hmm.
And then we look at some of the other challenges that we said. So, okay, great. We've created a great BIM execution plan. We've created the perfect scope. But now when we go to execute the work, we are working independently in different places, different offices. And what we are trying to do is have teams understand what other teams are doing, because there's such an influence between when I'm modeling. I'm not going to put in the audio visual in this room that I'm in until we've obviously set the walls, or we've set the ceiling, or we know exactly the location of some of the furniture. So there's this sequence that would be really valuable, and understanding where those other parties are and running a clash avoidance workflow with a priority of work, it really helps to reduce the number of clashes. So in that workflow, where if you have a defined set of tasks from the scope, and you're able to then sequence them and keep those in the same environment so that everyone can see when, for example, the structural team are going to be done with their wall layout, so that you can come in and know for sure, or within reason, because we understand change is rife in our industry, but being able to be more clear that it's not going to keep changing, or you putting something that somebody else is just going to try and claim the space of. And there's a case study that we can share after the webinar, which actually highlights a 53% reduction in coordination issues based on following a sequence like this. So really being able to understand the sequence of events, but not have those in completely disparate schedules, and also having it tied to the original set of requirements, has been incredibly powerful for teams. So in this example, we know that the stairs in the common areas we are requiring to be set in this example before we are putting the hot water piping in. And that might be that we've run the risers already, and that was something that was dependent before the stairs. And then when we put the stairs in, we might run the distribution after that. So having these systems broken down in a way that we can sequence has been able to reduce the number of clashes in the outputs that teams that are then putting together at the end. And I did click, I promise.
Yep, it's coming.
And then the tracking side of things, once we've understood what the sequence of events are, sometimes people are focus on things that are important maybe to them, but maybe not the good of the project, or they are creating something at a time that maybe it's not needed for others, and running that and keeping that in sync is it's a challenge for teams. And keeping focus so that you're not, and BIM can be incredibly challenging from there's lots to do all the time. How do you stay and remain focused? And then how do you understand that one person has or has not completed something, and so somebody else hasn't completed the same thing at different or disparate times. So really understanding that is a key, and we end up with a lot of waste in that workflow. And there's a movement now for lean implementation, lean design management, and being able to stop starting and start finishing, that phrase there, and have a lean approach and be able to really focus in on the tasks that are important for the greater good of the project, because that's already been agreed in the sequence and it's already been agreed as part of the scope. And then so this is Ted filtering his tasks. He says, I am responsible for these things. They're my things that are in progress. And as I drag and drop them, this is me updating the whole team as to what has now been done or what's at least ready for review. And we say, okay, that would be great if we could get all of that right. But we still have a disconnected workflow from the planning and management to the actual BIM compliance sometimes. So the last challenge, and maybe one of the most important ones, is closing the loop and making sure that everything that you just planned, everything that you just sequenced and managed, and then you're saying is done, we need to make sure that it's verified, and we need to make sure that we are BIM compliant. And so the last step, the last of those 5 steps, is understanding the verification process. And it's a really interesting workflow, understanding that we have to, at the moment, run or understand a BIM execution planning process in one document somewhere, and then another document that describes the scope, and then we've got schedules all over, and then maybe there's another tracking mechanism for our tasks. And we put all of that together, and then we try to assess based on the model aggregation what has been done and what hasn't. And so we said, let's simplify that. Let's make it a lot easier, and let's connect the models to the requirements and have it in a list, have the model really linked to them so that you can click and see visually what that is as a responsibility, who is responsible. So in this example, Ted was responsible. He had 3 tasks on his checklist. He's added attachments to prove that he's done something. And those stairs, when we click on the task, you can visualize, you can understand model status, you can see what the parameters are, and that matches up with what the requirements were in that workflow. So being able to go through that whole workflow and have true BIM compliance is really, really important. And I get quite passionate about this because we really care about the start and the end. Everyone talks about, begin with the end in mind, but don't begin in the middle with the end in mind. Begin at the beginning with the end in mind, if that makes sense. I think that, Peter, you're going to share a couple of project examples.
Yep. So this is one of the projects that we started actually using with one of our clients. And it's a very large project, and I'm going to say that to start with, but this works on just about any size project. So it doesn't have to be insanely big like this one. So as an idea, this project is covering 240 acres. It encompasses over 25 buildings. So we're looking at probably over 200 Revit models complete, and then also CAD for Civil 3D, InfraWorks. All disciplines are involved on this. So this is covering over 12 million square feet. There's several hundred people participating in it when you include the architects, the owners, the civil engineers, construction crews, everybody that's going to be accessing this. And when we say how big the budget is, it's in that is supposed to be a B. It is $6 billion. It's a rather large project. So you can imagine how much fun it's going to be trying to wrangle everyone together and make sure that everybody is actually on the same page with regards to what is required, what are we trying to deliver. So the first issue that my teammate was trying to solve when he was starting off the coordination process for this was scoping it out and making sure everybody understood what is being delivered and when that's being delivered. And like we showed earlier, there's a lot of different tools that are relatively, I want to say basic, but beneficial without a lot of work. And one of the first ones we looked at was actually using Excel. The problem with that is when you start to look at something at this scale, let alone normal scale, you start to realize just how cumbersome it can actually be. almost as cumbersome as trying to do a presentation when the internet is insanely laggy. There you go. Now, with that said, this does convey the information, albeit not very easily. So traditional tables like this are either people aren't going to fill it out, or they don't want to have to fill out 300 different fields separately. They want to keep things very smooth. They'd rather just say, I'm going to deliver this and be done with it. Or sometimes the people that are filling these out are not the ones who are actually doing the work. The communication is, even internally in one company, not going all the way through. And when I say they're not very good looking, I'm not saying that they're not pretty. I'm saying that they're not very communicative. You know, they don't really efficiently deliver the information that you're putting in here. There's a lot of information in here. It's all very accurate, but if I can't find it, if I can't understand it, it's not useful. So one of the things that we ended up looking for was something to make this more efficient, more useful for the project team. And what Nick ended up finding was actually Plannerly. And you can kind of see the difference between looking at information in the background versus looking at the information in the foreground. One of which anybody can look at and they have an understanding of what's to be delivered and at what portion of the project. The other one, they're looking at a 2 or 3 letter acronym and hoping they have an idea of that. You know, one of them has a color code in the upper right-hand corner stating who is actually responsible for that. The other one, again, I have to look at an acronym and maybe figure out who that's supposed to be. Now, one of the really nice benefits of this, though, is that outside of having all the data in this field, they found it very easy to communicate with everybody on the project. They would actually take this, they would send it out, they would get feedback from the other people on the project, and they created a workflow where they would send out the reports, they would get feedback from them. If people were realizing that, okay, we don't expect we're going to deliver this, they would put a markup on it, and then they could talk back and forth, and again, ensure everybody was looking at the same thing and had the right understanding of that. And one of the things that Clive mentioned is you don't want to have, a 100-page document. Well, the full document on here is over 200 pages. But again, the data is communicative, it's easy, and if I were to go in there and filter it to only show me a specific discipline, or if I just wanted to find out, show me the things that my company is responsible for, within seconds I'm looking at 6 pages worth of data. That's very easy to understand and to go through.
That's
so you're not opening up Word. And
yeah, just to reinforce it, because I think that when you create something and it's a PDF, and in our industry, we're very contractually sort of passing the buck all of the time and saying, here, this is your responsibility, and you get a stack of contract documents, and they have to then find where exactly their work is. Most of the time, you get a bid back or a response back, which is inflated because there's an element of risk. They're uncertain about what they're supposed to be doing, when they're supposed to be doing it, how much they're supposed to do. And if you can filter and literally, we've got a couple of examples where you just print, okay, this is the plumbing scope for the 2 milestones that they're involved in, and it's, a couple of pages, and do you agree with that? They're suddenly so much more bought in, they understand, they'll deliver. It's not confusing. It's not hidden inside of a huge stack of paper. So that's a really important part. I agree.
And one of the things that they actually found outside of just being able to communicate that was the inclusion of the data. So all of these different things here, you might say, God, 100 pages, somebody had to write out every single one of these. Actually, no. When you're using it, you can actually bring in templates of data. So it starts off the process for you. Like anything else, it's easier to add in 200 things and then remove 30 than it was to add in 170. And one of the great things that he found was in one of the templates that he actually got from Plannerly, it included things like clearances. So a lot of the things that actually aren't out of the box inside of Uniformat, which is the formatting that they're using for this project, this is including things for mechanical. So if I need to make sure that my team is modeling clearances so we can do clashes and make sure that things actually can be maintained after installation. And not just that, there was also clearances for site work. So if there's areas that can't be disturbed or need to be careful around, all of that's already in here. So you can assign the responsibility for that and ensure that it's in the model when you need it. Now, for this project, there was a lot of things going on, and like anything else, there were different lessons learned. There we go. So One of the first ones was when they're using the tool, if you want to have under the same sort of folder or organization, and some of this is going to depend on how you prefer to organize the content in the project. But if you wanted to actually have multiple levels of detail within sort of the same parent. So I'm still looking at metal stairs in both examples, but let's say maybe my railings at a certain portion of the project, I still only am requiring that to be done in 2D. I don't need the model at that point. Or maybe I just don't need it at the same level of detail that I need the structural components of that stair. So in this case, all I have to do is right-click, hit a button, and I've got the 3D content. So I can very quickly and simply get that content in there. One of the other benefits that we learned from this is that we found that there wasn't really enough input or involvement from the project management team. However, what we found from the success story is that fed that. So, and what I mean by that is not that it was bad. As we started to go through this process, the project management actually was better. So one of the things that we did was we were able to very easily and very quickly create these tables. That ensured that everybody was able to take responsibility for the portions that was theirs. And this was done much faster than would have been done elsewise. The other thing is, when we had these tables created, these were sent out with the RFPs. So people who were bidding on this saw right from the get-go what was expected. They were able to start communicating on this. So it's not like, okay, well, wait a minute, we didn't know this. Like, no, we gave you a graphic, and you can actually communicate on that. So everybody, again, right from the beginning, we're all talking about the same thing. So that's streamlining that process. When there were changes or when there was coordination, the subs would send back what was sent out to them with their comments or with their feedback. Again, we're all still talking about the exact same thing. We're all working towards a common goal. We're all working on the same team. And all that ensured that when we're talking to our owner, we're helping make sure that they are actually getting the right information, that they are understanding how to ask for the right information so that way it comes back to them from everybody involved. So on some of the projects, we're more of a consultant. So we can create the documentation, but we can't enforce it. Part of our role is making sure that our client, whether it's the owner, the CM, the designer, has the knowledge and confidence to know what they're getting and how to ask so that way they receive what they want or what they require. So we're just making sure that everybody, again, like anything else, is on the same page. Now, one of the comments that my coworker said, which was great, is that it's hard to track what you don't know you need. This ensures that everybody knows what you're looking for and what you need, and ensures that you're able to actually track it.
I had one comment, Peter, of when you ask one of the teams delivering the model what they think, first ask that question, they kind of think it's a trick question. And I had one person say, the response was, this isn't quite right, because in the 25 years that I've been doing this, and in the 15 that I've been delivering some kind of BIM, nobody's asked me what I've actually thought. So what's the trick? And there's no trick. It's lean workflow and getting everyone involved and having a collaborative and communicative visual platform to be able to actually agree before the train wreck, before the BIM falls off the train rail. Yeah, absolutely.
It's a lot easier to work together on something when everyone's on the same page and working towards a common goal.
Absolutely.
Now, I've been keeping my eye on the Q&A box. I haven't got anything in there yet, but if anybody has any questions, definitely please feel free to pop them in there. We'll be glad to answer whatever we can. And while we wait for those to pop in, for other, if you'd like to learn more, two great places to go to is the Plannerly site, plannerly.com, or the Microdesk site. And our upcoming webinars in the next 2 months, we have a What's New in Civil 3D and InfraWorks, so the last service packs to them. That's going to be done on March 24th. We also have a Discovering Dynamo. So we've been talking about Dynamo over the last couple of years. Most of that was always focused on Revit. The next one they're going on is going to be focusing on using that for Civil 3D.
We were so clear. I can't see any questions. I mean, maybe I'm not looking at the right.
Nope, you're looking at the right spot. I'm keeping an eye on it.
And hopefully,
Clive, what would you say is the most often asked question that you get?
It changes because every time we get a question, we try and solve it in a really simple way, and that's kind of has been our MO for the duration. Every time there's a challenge, we're all about how do we make sure that that never occurs again, and from a lean perspective, really driving to the root cause. And sometimes it's I didn't know how to do this inside of the application, or we have a conversation and somebody says, oh, I didn't even realize that was there. And so it's trying to be, from a UI UX perspective in a workflow, we're trying to build software that doesn't need any training. And we found that we get the best results when we don't create training material, and then we get questions. And there's a chat box in the bottom corner of the app and the website, and they can get responses. And we also offer unlimited 30-minute sessions to the company plan holders so that they can get training. But we really learn, and we want to build that in. So the questions do change. I think one of the most recent ones is more about BIM compliance, because it's now getting old hat. We've connected the workflow for requirements, gathering, and contracting, and now it's more about, well, okay, we've integrated that workflow. How do we now make sure that we are compliant to it? And so the slightly new, but as in quite recently, it's been an upgrade of one of the modules. It was called View, and now it's called Verify. So the fifth module in that workflow is about dropping the model in and making sure that you are compliant to the original objectives. So that's one of them. Templates is a big thing as well. So the benefit to having an online environment that you can create templates across a company and then leverage them for future projects in a bite-sized fashion, rather than going to a file structure, finding a word processing document, doing a copy and paste, opening that up, doing a find and replace, doing a kind of like, oh, I have to read the whole thing and try and eliminate the parts that we're not doing on this project, or when I add new things to this as the project specific, do I need to then go and update another template that we had, or do I just not worry about that because I'm mostly focused on this project? And that whole kind of, so templates is a big thing as well. And we'll have some new features, new templates features coming out in a few weeks that will make that even easier than it is today.
Nice.
So
the templates was one of the two things that I liked the most when I started getting into that aspect, because I could set up one project and then easily drag that in and start a whole new project from that. Or I can look at existing projects and templates and then piecemeal say, I want this piece from that project and this one from that one. And when we were talking like the Excel spreadsheet, I don't want to have to go to every single cell or have to drag and have to tweak that, was the ability to create essentially a stamp tool. So I go in and I say, I want to assign this to the architect and this at 200 LOD. And then I just go through and click on all the cells that I need to apply that specific set of standards, responsibilities, or information to. And it just streamlines the process of running through and laying that out.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Anything that we can do to make that workflow quicker, but more, like as you said, it's not just making it a prettier document. It's about making it an output that is going to be powerful for the end user and more easily communicated between their team, and then getting to an agreement before contracting, and then being able to follow up on that as you manage it and then close out with compliance. And it's a workflow that we've struggled with for a while, but making everything easier. So it's really great to hear those sorts of comments from you, Peter, and from other users around the world, which is, it puts a smile on our face, and it makes us excited to develop more and more in the application and the workflow.
Yeah, we had a legitimate project issue or concern that we were trying to find a solution for on a very large project, and we luckily came across Plannerly. We started looking at it and found that it works perfect for this specific project, and then from there we decided that, you know what, this does solve a lot of problems that a lot of our clients are also looking for, and we're very happy and very proud to have a partnership with them now. So it's something that we're looking forward to growing and to helping all of our clients with as things move forward. So Clive, thank you so much for your time today. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. If anybody does have any questions afterwards, always feel free to reach out to us or Plannerly. We will both be very glad to help out, whether it's a question about the software, workflow, or anything else. Otherwise, everybody enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Bye for now.